This controller for the Nintendo Switch has a dock built into it. That means you can easily switch between handheld and docked mode without having to deal with the Joy-Cons and putting on a more comfortable grip. I've played around with the Dobe Eggshell TNS-2163 for the past week now and want to share my thoughts about it because I think it's a very interesting and unique product. Here are some quick notes to get out of the way if you don't want to watch the whole video. It costs about 43 euros or US dollars on AliExpress. It works with the normal and the OLED Switch. It has a built-in dock. It has a great and robust feeling in your hand. The motion controls work okay. It has a rumble, but that feels too loud and harsh. It has a very good kickstand. There are 2 back buttons that don't feel that great though. It does have macro and turbo functionality. The D-pad is bad. You get misinputs like on the Pro controller. All the other buttons feel quite good though. The sticks are a bit smaller than usual. There are 2 slots for game cartridges on the back that seem pretty good. It is bigger than the Switch with Joy-Cons, but smaller than the Switch with the Hori SplitPad Pro. The controller comes in a fairly bare-bones box with just a little manual in it, but that's fine, and the setup is very simple. You just slide the Switch in from the top, and it connects to the USB port on the bottom. And when it's in, it feels really nice in the hands, much better than the regular feel of the Switch. I have a normal Switch, but apparently the OLED model works too, because it's almost identical in its dimensions. To get it out, you simply push it out with your thumbs. Also, make sure to turn on wired Pro controller connection and settings. The USB-C port is relocated to the top of the thing. Because of that, it's easier to charge the console while playing in bed, for example. Usually I would stab myself with a cable poking out the bottom of the console, but luckily not with this controller. As I've mentioned, it has a built-in dock, which is why there are these ports on top. The only thing you're gonna miss out on are the 2 additional USB-A ports that would be on the side of the dock, or the Ethernet port that would be on the inside. But you still have access to 1 USB-A port, 1 USB-C port for charging or power delivery, and an HDMI port for connecting it to a TV or a monitor. And this works perfectly fine. As soon as you connect the cables, the switch pops up on the screen. On the back of the controller is a button that switches between handheld mode and docked mode if you are connected. If you're not connected, the button doesn't do anything. You can play with a Pro controller, for example, that you connect to the Switch, or even use the actual controller itself. You could even connect the controller with a cable through the USB-A port on the top. Most of the buttons feel fine and perfectly usable, except for the D-pad and the back buttons. Unfortunately, this PlayStation style D-pad is prone to a ton of misinputs similar to the Switch Pro controller D-pad. Pressing up or down makes it easy to register as left or right inputs, and vice versa. This made it annoying in some Mario Maker clips that I can show you, where I first started climbing a vine, so pressing up, when I was just trying to hold left. And right here it was registering a up input when I was just pressing right, and then I went into the spikes. The back buttons also don't feel amazing, because they are weird to press. Instead of pressing the buttons kind of inside the controller, it feels like I have to move my fingers as if I slip off of the buttons. It's hard to explain exactly, but it's just weird. Also, my left back button is even more difficult to press, like I need a more specific angle or otherwise it won't even press down. And when it does, it doesn't really feel like it's being pressed. You can hear a click, but there is not really a physical click. The right back button doesn't have that issue though, so it might just be a problem with my unit. Other than that, it all feels really good. The face buttons have a defined click, although a bit stiff for my taste. Bumpers and triggers are pretty similar to the Pro controller. The sticks feel fine, although the sticks themselves are rather small. Putting these stick caps on worked better than I thought. I expected them to feel wobbly, but they don't. These aren't included, by the way, I just had these lying around. The extra buttons, like plus and minus, have a nice clicky feel to them and they're easy to press, but not easy to accidentally press. You can program the back buttons by holding the program button until the light blinks, then you hit the button you want, and then the back button you want. If you want to disable the back buttons again, hold the gear button and then the back button. There is a weird thing going on where while you can program both back buttons and use both, you can only use one at a time. That means in Mario or Zelda games, for example, you can't sprint with the right back button by holding it and then pressing the left back button to jump. It will only register the first input in this case. I don't really care for those buttons on this controller at least, so it's not a big deal for me, but I feel like I need to mention this as it is an issue with one of the features. There are 2 turbo modes. If you hold the T button and press A, for example, then whenever you hold A, it will rapid fire that button. If you hold T and press A again, it will rapid fire without you having to press anything. And to turn it off, just hold T and A again. The rumble does work, but for my taste it is too strong and loud or harsh. Most of the time I disable rumble anyway. Here are some impressions of the rumble in different scenarios. Most of these games feel shitty to play with this rumble because it's so obnoxious and partially it's louder than the game itself. It also has motion controls, and those are a little funky too. At first I thought they were fine when I was shooting things in Breath of the Wild, but when I tried this shrine called Totoro Sa Shrine, I noticed that I struggled to align the stairs. I then swapped over to a Pro controller and had a much easier time. It's really weird because it felt normal when shooting enemies. So I tried it with the Joy-Cons attached, and that for whatever reason also gave me a hard time. And then what's also weird, it was fine with the Joy-Con detached. I also tried to recalibrate the console and the Joy-Con's motion controls, but that didn't change anything. So now I don't really know what the hell I should make of all this. Throwing Cappy in Mario Odyssey, however, worked fine though, but you don't have to be precise there, I think. You just have to move the controller in the general direction. Unlike the normal Switch, this kickstand works well. Like, really well. The console doesn't tip over even when I try to knock it over by punching it around a little bit. There are no options though, which means that it has one angle that it can stand at and that's it. I believe the kickstand of the OLED Switch has different angles that it can stand at. Now here are some visual comparisons between this controller, the Hori SplitPad Pro, and the Joy-Cons. It's bigger than the Switch with the Joy-Cons, but smaller than the SplitPad. This means that it might fit into some wider Switch cases, but I don't have any to try it on. I have to say that out of those three options I mentioned, this is the most comfortable one for me at the moment. It feels the best because it is one entire piece, which makes it more robust, and honestly, it doesn't really feel like an attachment, but more so like one solid handheld device. Also, neither the Switch nor the game cartridges move at all when aggressively shaking the entire thing while upside down. I do have to say though, it doesn't feel quite as good as a full-on controller, mainly due to the stick and the face button layout. Reaching for the stick feels a little awkward, on the right side at least, but still a little bit better than the Joy-Cons because the sticks are slightly offset. Now I know that there's also the Nitro deck out by now that a lot of people are talking about, and it has most of the functionalities of this controller, but I didn't get that one yet for a few reasons. A, it doesn't have the docking ability, which I found really unique and wanted to try out. B, it costs 70 euros for me here in Germany as opposed to the 43 that I paid for this controller. And C, it came out later in Germany and I didn't want to wait that long. Since this controller is connected to the console via USB-C instead of a wireless connection, I was curious if it drained the battery a lot, and from what I can tell, it doesn't really influence it. I did a bunch of testing off camera, and if you want to know more details, I show my findings on screen. As a side note, my Switch is the OG model, so neither the OLED nor the refresh version with the better battery life. The main takeaways are, while playing and while in sleep mode, the Switch charged by about 10% per 10 minutes, so about 1% per minute. With the Joy-Cons, the console charged the same. While playing Zelda without charging, the Eggshell controller lost about 25% charge in 30 minutes, and the Switch with the Joy-Cons lost 27% in a little under 20 minutes. The Joy-Cons weren't on full charge though, and therefore were probably being charged while I was playing, so I guess that's why the battery was drained quicker here. All in all, the battery drain doesn't seem to be a concern with the controller. For my final thoughts, As far as I know, this is the only product right now that is essentially a controller grip thingy with a dock built in. This makes it very unique and its main selling point in my opinion. The docking does work well and I didn't really encounter any issues, neither docked nor handheld. I would say that it's pretty good for 3D games like Mario Odyssey or Astral Chain, but not so great for 2D games or games that require a good D-pad in general. Rumble and gyro are there, but they're too funky to be reliable. It could be an option when traveling. You have the more comfortable grip as opposed to the Joy-Cons when you're in handheld mode, and you could hook it up to a TV or something if you're in a hotel or a friend's house without needing to bring a full Switch dock. You just need the cables. It is sort of a 3-in-1 package. It combines a grip, a dock, and a controller, which means that you don't need a grip that you take off when docking the console, because most grips aren't dockable, and even though there are some that are dockable, you would still need to use the Joy-Cons. This thing kinda makes it easy to comfortably play handheld and docked mode. However, you will still need to manually plug in 2 or maybe 3 cables, so it's not completely convenient. For a little over $40, I would say that it could be a pretty good deal though, for a more comfortable way to play in handheld mode while also being able to connect to a TV without needing a dock, as long as you don't need the 2 extra USB slots or the Ethernet port on the OLED model. In any case though, I would recommend an original Switch AC adapter to use with this, or at least a USB-C charger that supports the PD protocol for power delivery. Even though I haven't heard about any Switches getting bricked by third-party docks recently, it's always better to use the official accessories if you're unsure. Thank you.